I see you.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
We are so excited to see you, like beyond excited. Thank you so much for joining our little book club. We're all huge fans of yours.
Oh, this is so great. So tell me now, where am I talking to you guys all today?
Yes, we're scattered a little bit, maybe I want to say within an hour of each other, but generally we're in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Okay, so you guys, I have to ask you, how is the COVID situation over there?
Yeah, definitely worse than you guys. We keep our eye on the US pretty closely because we get a lot of our vaccines from you right now. And currently where we are, it differs a lot from major city to major city, but it's speaking for where we are in Ottawa or around Ottawa. We've been vaccinating ages 40 and up and older. So if you're 40 and under, you're still waiting for enough vaccines to come in to get a number essentially. So we're in lockdown. Everything's closed. We're staying at home. And that's why I started the quarantine book club, so that I could connect with my ladies and talk to people and have good conversations and exchange good ideas and just feel like a sense of social connection. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, that is what book clubs feel like. It feels like, you're talking to people who have a like-minded interest, and you can all like get behind something that, you're all going to have some good time discussing.
Oh,
so that's really cool.
I'm so excited to talk about, we're also excited to talk about the Henna Artist because I think it's a life changer for everyone that's read it. I know one of our women, Ashley, has read it in 24 hours.
Really?
We were like in awe at that.
Did you stay up all night or something, or are you just a super fast reader?
Oh man. Well, before we continue, I have an introduction to give to the group on behalf of Alka Joshi. She's a New York Times bestselling author of The Henna Artist, and she's a graduate of Stanford University. She received her MFA from the California College of the Arts. Alka was born in India in the state of Rajasthan. Her family came to the United States when she was 9, and she now lives on California's Monterey Peninsula. The Secret Keeper of Jaipur is her second novel. Visit her website and blog at www.alkajoshi.com. There we go. Well, exciting stuff. Oh, thank you again for coming. This is such an honor and a pleasure to meet you face to face. I've watched a lot of your interviews. So I kind of had a feeling for your warmth and your presence going into this. So I was just super excited to meet you for myself and have a good conversation about your work.
Okay, well, great. So I'm sorry you're going to probably have to listen to me say the same things over and over, but what I'm going to do is just take you through this journey that I've been on. A lot of people say, wow, this is your debut novel and, you're a bestseller. You're like an overnight success. And I got to tell you, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Everybody has to work really hard to become successful. And it was no different in my case. So in 2008, when the mortgage crisis was upon us, I was thinking, okay, I am going to probably experience the same recession that I always experience with every kind of economic crisis. For 2 years, my business is going to slow down. Clients are going to either pull back a project or they're going to cancel it altogether. And so I just have to ride it out. That's usually what I've had to do with recessions. And so I thought, okay, always before I've traveled or visited family somewhere, or I've done, I've read books, learned something new. So I thought, oh, why don't I learn something new this time? What I can do is enter one of these 2-year creative writing programs. And they last exactly 2 years. It's very intensive, and you learn how to write a novel. And there was a university close to my house where I could enroll and do something like that. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Why did I do that? because my husband had been encouraging me for about 15 years. He'd been saying, you know, I think that you can write long form fiction. I said, no, I'm just an advertising hack. All I do is write commercials all day long. I write radio spots. I write advertising brochures. I'm not, you know, I'm not a serious writer. And he said, no, I think that you can do this. I don't know what you think serious writing is about, but it's really about entertaining, and it is about informing, and it's about resonating with people, you know, creating characters that resonate with people. So I thought, all right, I've got 2 years here. I'm going to give it a try. The program cost $66,000 American dollars. It was a big commitment. But I think that if you're going to do anything like this, where you want to learn something and you want it to stick with you, I think you have to invest in yourself. You have to spend the money, whether you have it today or not. I think, you know, I had half the money and I took out the other half as a loan. But you just have to invest in yourself. And I've always believed in investing, you know, in my growth. So at the same time that I was getting all of this stuff straightened out about what I'm going to do for 2 years, my younger brother has bought a condo in Jaipur. And Jaipur is a place that we know well because we used to live there at one time as a family. And also most of our extended family still lives there. So he thought, you know what, I'm going to buy a condo and I'm going to outfit it and furnish it for mom and dad, because they're getting older and they're starting to talk about, you know, all these old friends that they still have in India. And so why don't I just make it possible for them to go anytime they want, stay for as long as they want. So that's why he set this condo up. Well, my mom jumped on it right away because she said, honey, she said to me, honey, let's go. You chaperone me there. I'm going to stay there a little bit longer. You come back, you finish off a semester, wait until a break or something, and then come back and get me. And so we actually ended up repeating this pattern 4 or 5 times during my MFA program. Now, I had not spent all this time with my mother since I was about 18 years old and went away to college. I hadn't really spent a lot of time just sort of talking to my mother. But now that I was 50 and she was 70 something, you know, we were like more mature, and we could travel through Rajasthan and sort of talk to each other about all kinds of things, I think, that we had never talked to each other about. And I'm asking her, you know, Mom, what was your favorite fruit growing up? Who were the friends whom you hung out with? What were the kind of games that you guys used to play? Who were the movie stars that you were in love with? You know, because we all had that, right? When we were younger, we all had movie stars that we fell in love with, and we're like, oh, I hope I get to meet them someday. And of course, I knew my mom had that. We would go to the Pink City Bazaar and she would show me the saris that she would have bought had she been a young bride at that time. We went to the city palace and did a little tour. And my mom said, hey, did you know that I've actually met with the Maharani one time? Because when we were going abroad, she wanted to meet with all of the wives of families who were going abroad to study or to work. And I said, no, I didn't know that, Mom. What was she like? You know, how beautiful she was and how elegant and all of that. So we're talking about that. And that gets me sort of doing some research on the Maharanis of Jaipur. And then we went to Agra. It's about a 6-hour car ride. You have to hire a car, and you have to make sure it's air conditioned because it is hot. It is hot in Rajasthan. So we hire a car, we go all the way to Agra. And Agra is where the Taj Mahal is, as I'm sure you know. And my mother had spent most of her school years there, and she had also been to her first year of college there. So as we're going through the old school and meeting with the current headmistress, my mother is telling me the story of how when she was 18 and in her first year of college, her father called her and said, we have found the perfect arrangement for you for marriage. And in 2 months, you will be married. So come on back. And my mother went back to her home and never, ever went back to college again. So at 18, she meets my father for the first time. And it's like in a crowded room with lots of relatives and friends. Everybody wants to see who this new couple is. They want to check everybody out from all sides. And then the next time my mom sees my dad, they're walking around the fire to be married. So she had never said word one to him. And then, in 4 short years, mom has 3 kids. And, then my father is this young, promising engineer. So he is helping rebuild India in the 1950s. He's building roads and dams and bridges. So he's constantly on the move. And we are constantly as a family on the move because he gets assigned to projects for 2 years, for 3 years. And so mom's always moving house. And it turns out that we lived in 5 different cities by the time I was 9 years old. So I've never felt this kind of stable, okay, I belong here. I've never sort of had that sort of feeling. And so then mom said, at the 10-year mark or 11-year mark in their marriage, my father suddenly announces, hey, I want to go to abroad. I want to go abroad to study. And I've gotten into this doctoral program that I want to be in. We're either going to go to Iowa in the US or we're going to end up in Germany. We ended up in Iowa. And so then mom had to get used to, a whole new culture and get us into all new different kind of schools and different activities and all of that. And it occurred to me that my mother's life was never her own. She just never had the right to say, no, I don't want to marry this person, or I don't want to have a 3rd child, or this is how I'd like to plan my life, or I would like to have a career. But she always made sure that I, her only daughter, always had all of those choices. She always said, honey, you have to make sure that you get into a good college, that you get a job, and you make yourself financially independent before marriage, because that will give you all kinds of future options. If the marriage doesn't work out, you will always have something to fall back on. And, I knew that she was sort of speaking for herself. She was kind of saying, I didn't get to have these options, and I might have lived a very different life had I had that. So she said, I'm never going to tell you whom to marry or what to do in a career. I'm not going to force you to become a doctor or a lawyer like a lot of immigrant children are forced to do. And I'm just going to let you do whatever you want. And then when I turned 18, and I went away to college, I came back for Christmas and I said, Mom, I think there's this boy I really like. I think I want to sleep with him, because I had never had a boyfriend before. In high school, I had always been the girl who got the straight A's, never went to any parties. And I was super, super shy. So even if I had gone to parties, I wouldn't have spoken to anybody anyway. But then I go away to college and I sort of blossom, and, I find that, guys are attracted to me. Maybe it was just me this whole time being all shy. So I come home and I tell my mom, and she says, okay, honey, I'm going to make an appointment for us to see the doctor while you're here, and we'll get you some birth control pills so that, you don't get pregnant, because it's very important not to get pregnant right away, not before marriage, and especially just after marriage. Just don't get pregnant right away. I'm like, okay. And then she told me the most unusual thing, and it kind of shocked me because I was such a goddamn prude. But she said, don't marry the first guy you sleep with, honey, because that may not be the right guy for you. I mean, she said, you might feel like you've got to marry the first guy you sleep with, but it's not, you don't have to. I don't know where my mom got all these ideas when she was, raised to be so obedient and in such a traditional way and so on. So anyway, I always felt so independent in whatever choices I made, and they were always great for my mom and dad. Like they always said, great, honey, that's a great idea. Do that. You want to be an artist, go ahead and be an artist, but make sure that you're an artist who makes money, because we're not supporting you for the rest of your life. So you've got to figure out something here. So in 2008, what had happened at the time that I was entering this MFA program, is I had been running my, agency, and I'd gotten into advertising, I'd gotten into marketing and all of that. So I had tried a whole bunch of other careers first, and I had really found that I had a niche in this one. So I kind of went with it. All right. So now I enter my program. I'm with my mom in India a lot, and I start thinking about a character who could have lived the life that my mother, I think, would have liked to live. I think my mother would have liked to be Lakshmi, who leaves her marriage after the first couple of years, but before children are born. And then she goes off and forges her own path in life. And she decides when to leave. She decides when to have sex with somebody. She decides all of these things. And so, you know, I shared all of this with my mom. I go, Mom, I'm writing this story and it is sort of your alter ego. And my mom gets a kick out of it because she goes, well, first of all, honey, I've never done henna on anybody in my life. I said, that's okay, Mom. It's not actually a memoir. It's not actually a biography. It's not your life. It's just, I get to invent some things too in this character. And one of the things I wanted to make sure is that Lakshmi is this kind of amazing henna artist who does get to make 10 times the money everybody else is making. And she's not going to do that if she's doing the kind of crude and primitive henna that was allowed and practiced in the 1950s. She's going to do something elaborate. The other thing that Mom pointed out, and I said, you are absolutely right, Mom, but once again, I get to take some creative license here, is that a henna artist in India is never going to feed you. That's not what they're there for. They're really just there to decorate your body. And but I wanted Lakshmi, because she is an herbalist also, to be able to use those herbs to help these women realize their desires and their objectives in life. Because, you know, it's not the henna that's going to accomplish it for them. It's really, you know, feeding them the kinds of food and spices that are going to help create that environment for them. So that's where all of that sort of thinking came from. All right, so I finished the first couple of drafts of the Henna Artist, and it becomes my thesis for my master's program. It was so enjoyable, you guys. I recommend, if any of you guys want to go through a writing program, it's so enjoyable because all you're doing is just writing. I mean, it's so fun. You're reading. You are reading other people's writing in your class, from your classes. You are critiquing their writing, they're critiquing yours. And all you're doing is just talking about literature all day long, and you're immersed in literature. And, you know, what better place for a bookworm like me to be? So it was really fun. I go through the program, but then about a year after my thesis reading, my mother died, and it was so unexpected. It was just completely out of the blue. So I thought, well, I wrote this book for Mom, and now she's gone. It doesn't make any sense for me to keep going with this. I think I'll just put it away. So I did. And I just got back to work because clients were calling and they're saying, okay, you know, I think we've decided we're going to resume that project, or we're going to start a new project or whatever. So we start working again. And about 2 years go by. And one of my thesis advisors calls me and she says, Alka, whatever happened to that book you were working on? Oh, you know, my mom died and so on. And she said, listen, why don't you bring it out? Sometimes the best way to work through grief is really through to write about the people who are making you so sad. So I said, okay, for the next year and a half, we work on the Henna Artist, and I send it back to her revised, and she sends it off to her agent. Next thing I know, Emma Sweeney from New York is calling me and saying, hey, I love the Henna Artist, and, you know, I love Lakshmi, and I love everything about this. Let's work on it. So I think, wow, I didn't even have to go and look for a literary agent. Here is one at my doorstep. I'm going to get published. And Emma said, not quite. You have some work to do on this novel. I thought it was so ready to go. So I was kind of taken aback. And she said, the first thing that you need to do is cut out every other chapter. I said, what? She said, yeah, you have to cut out every other chapter because you've got your chapters so that you're doing Lakshmi first person, then you're doing Radha first person, then Lakshmi first person. And I'm not interested in Radha. I'm only interested in Lakshmi. I said, well, Emma, maybe other people would be interested in Radha. And she said, no. Now, the problem is that when you have two perspectives in one novel, you have to make each of them equally as compelling. If they are not equally as compelling, you will lose your reader on every other chapter, and then they will put the book away. And she said, I have been in this business for 30 something years. I am not letting this book out of the stable until it is ready to be published. So we're going to get to work. 3 years later, we're still working on the novel. Finally, I say, Emma, I don't understand. I have cut 150 pages out of this novel. I have, rewritten so many scenes. I have rewritten the ending and the beginning. And at what point do we send it off to a publisher? She said, oh, you need to get yourself now a developmental editor. They're the people that will take you to the finish line. Okay, so I find a developmental editor. The first one is the one that Emma recommended, and she was lovely, Sandra Schofield. She's a great editor. If any of you guys want, to have an editor, I can send you all of these people's contacts. You pay them because this is something that they do for a living. And Sandra also teaches at the Iowa Writers Workshop in Iowa. And she's written her own novels, and she sends me back this glorious letter, with all these suggestions. And, you might want to think about this in your plot, and you might want to think about this for this character. And I thought, okay, obviously she was supposed to say that the book was ready for publication. So obviously she doesn't know what she's doing. And so I'm going to go hire myself another editor. So I hired another editor, and Ronit Wagman is her name. And she goes through the whole novel, and she sends me back 15 pages of corrections, additions, suggestions, recommendations. And I thought, wait a second, what is wrong with these editors? They're supposed to tell me I'm ready to get published. This is not right. This is a story that came out of my imagination. It came out of my head. Why is everybody else telling me that there's something wrong with it? Am I giving too much of my power away? And maybe I am. Maybe what they're telling me is that I am not meant to be a writer. I'm not meant to be an author. I'm not meant to publish this book. And I put the book away. I just thought, this is never going to see the light of day. Another year went by, and I was looking in my desk for something, and I run across the manuscript and I start reading it, just out of curiosity. And an hour later, I'm still reading, and I'm thinking, hey, this is pretty good. This is kind of a good story. I want to know what happens to Lakshmi, and what happens to Radha, and what happens to Kanta. What is going on? And I realized, maybe you guys have had the same experience where you look at something that you did a long time ago. Maybe it's a poem you wrote, maybe it's a garden you put together, or a shirt that you sewed, and you think, wow, I can't believe I did that. Look at how fine the stitching is on this shirt. Well, I didn't know I was that good of a seamstress or whatever. So I'm having this kind of feeling about the novel, and I think, well, let me take out those editorial comments and see what they were trying to say. Now I've had a year's worth of distance from those comments. And when I read them at this point, I realize that the editors are saying, this is a very publishable book. For some reason, I just couldn't hear that like a year before, because I was so, my nerves were so tender about yet another criticism coming through. And so they said, this is definitely going to get published, but here is how you can make it a bestseller. Here's how you can make it resonate with far more readers than you are currently doing. So I started to make the changes, maybe about 85% of the changes I made. Some of them I just had to let go because they weren't following the intention of my book. Then I sent it all back to Emma. I say, Emma, it's been 3 years since we've talked. I hope you remember me, and I hope you still want to represent me. I mean, meanwhile, I've never even looked at another agent. I don't even know if Emma's going to remember me. But I said, it's been 9 years since I started working on this book. So I have done everything you have asked me to do. Please do not ask me to make any more changes. I really need you to send this off to an editor, unless what you're trying to tell me is you don't want to represent me and you would really like me to go find another literary agent. And I was hoping she wouldn't say yes. She didn't. She said, no, don't worry about it. I'll send it off. She did. And within 2 months, we have a contract. The contract is from Mira Books, which is a division of HTP Books, which is a division of HarperCollins. And it is all women-centric. It is all female authors. It is all with very strong female heroines. So I have a new editor, Kathy, and she has changes that she wants me to make. And from the time that an author gets a contract to the time that you see your book on the shelf, it's about an 18-month to 2-year period. So during that time, you're working with your editor on final changes. Your art department is coming up with a fabulous cover for you. They're going through all their iterations before they show you a couple of finals. and the marketing department has decided that they hate your title and they would like to rename it the Henna Artist. So I'm like, okay, you guys know best, so whatever. So, they said this telegraphs what the book is really about. And then the sales department has done a great job selling the book. And what they had told me at HarperCollins, they flew me out to New York, they flew me out to Toronto, they had me meet with the biggest booksellers, the Indigo, the buyer at Indigo. They had me meet with so many different people, and they said, we are expecting the Henna Artist to be a big book for 2020. And by the way, your release date is March the 10th, 2020. So we are all waiting for that date to happen. On March the 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic and urged everyone to shut down their doors. So one by one, all the bookstores closed down, the libraries closed down, Amazon stopped shipping out books. They're only going to ship out toilet paper. My book is lower than toilet paper. Nobody is shipping out my books. And also, all of my launch events are canceled. Every single book event, every book signing, every conference, every panel I'm supposed to be a part of, canceled, canceled, canceled. And I just thought, what have I done? What karma am I carrying around in this life or in a previous life that has caused this to happen? I just need to go to bed and I need to pretend that all of this never happened, that I have not spent the last 12 years of my life working on this book. And I did. I just pulled the covers over my head. So I let myself wallow in this self-pity for about 2 days. And then I said, Alka, you have to get back up. You have to do something to rectify the situation. Who knows how long this pandemic is going to last? So I went to social media. And about a year before then, my editor had said to me, you really need to get on social media. I said, oh no, I'm kind of cringing because I'm not that familiar with Facebook or any of that stuff. She said, believe me, when you're talking about a book as visual as the Henna Artist, you have a lot of things you can talk about. You can talk about Jaipur, you can talk about saris, you can talk about the 1950s, and you can talk about, books that you're reading to inform yourself about the 1950s. So many things. And I thought, oh, okay, I see. So then I started doing that, and I loved Instagram because it was such a visual medium, and I could post pictures of things like my mother's jewelry. Like this one, you guys, is actually an anklet. My mother has all of these silver anklets from Rajasthan, and I just put a little extender in the back so that I can use them as necklaces because I think they make beautiful necklaces. Besides, you can't see my feet sitting down. I just get on the horse again, and I just start doing social media, and it works out great for me. And one of the things I tell people is, you guys, if you have a book club, please, please, please call me, because I'm on lockdown just like you are. And I don't get to talk to any readers unless you call me and say, we'd like you to be part of our 6-person book club. Please call me. So people started calling. And as of today, I have done 412 book clubs in the last year. Yeah, I just made myself available. I just told everybody, here's my email, contact me. I got contacted by everybody. You know how a lot of authors whom I have tried to contact in the past and tried to say, oh, I loved your book. I loved your book so much. I never, ever, ever got a call back. I never got an email. I never got anything back from another author. And I thought, I'm not going to be one of those authors. If somebody wants to ask me a question about why I wrote something or why a character did something, I'm going to answer them, because that's the way I would like to have been treated as a reader, and never was. So I just put my email out there, and people started calling. So that was really, really great. People started getting in touch. Now, another couple of weeks go by, and my editor calls me and she goes, I want you to sit down. I have something to tell you. So I sat down. I thought, oh man, it's going to be more bad news. Like the warehouse caught fire and there's no more books left. And she says, Reese Witherspoon is going to pick your book on May the 1st, 2020 for her book club. And I was completely taken aback. I didn't even know what to say. I was stunned. I was like, oh my God, the Reese Witherspoon, like that Reese Witherspoon, the one that has that book club. And Kathy goes, yes, yes, yes. And so for the next 4 weeks, you're going to be working with Hello Sunshine, and you're going to be helping them populate their social media. Well, I already had this whole storehouse of things I was doing on social media. So I passed it all along to them. Things about my mom's saris, things about her wedding jewelry, things. We did some cooking videos, and my older brother, I had him make a Maharani cocktail for the Maharani who likes to water her orchids with gin and tonics. And by the way, I love gin. So that's, so that Maharani is drinking all the things I usually drink. So anyway, it's really fun, and we're doing all of that. And then May 1st rolls around, and suddenly I'm talking to Reese Witherspoon. And I have to tell you, I kind of lost it for a second, because I was supposed to get on that Instagram live with her. And I just, the directions of how I was supposed to get on Instagram live with her flew right out of my head. And I thought, oh my God, what do I do first? What do I do second? Oh my God, should I turn my phone off? Should I turn my phone on? Should I turn my computer on? Oh my God, I was like, and here I can hear Reese. I can hear her on my husband's phone upstairs, and she's saying something like, we're just waiting for Alka to get on so we can talk to her about the Henna Artist. Oh my God, I almost blew it. So I called Dominic over at Hello Sunshine. I said, Dominic, please walk me through this. I'm sweating like a pig. I am just so nervous about being on this thing with Reese Witherspoon. So he did. He walked me through the whole thing. He was so kind, so generous. Whew. And then finally I'm on there with Reese Witherspoon, and I'm in awe of this young woman. She's only 45 to my 63. And she has done this phenomenal thing where she has turned the publishing world on its head. She has said, you know what? I think women, female authors who write the kind of books that I'm interested in and that my friends are interested in, they deserve more of a spotlight than they're getting from publishers. They deserve some of those full pages in the New York Times that they don't get. They deserve the kind of interviews like on Larry King and Charlie Rose and Terry Gross, that many of the male authors get, but the female authors don't get. So let me use my influence to make that happen. And she started this only 4 short years ago. And look at where we are today. If you open up any of the bestseller lists, you're suddenly going to find 4 or 5 of her picks on there. That is the power of Reese. So suddenly, within a month, we are on the bestseller list. We're on the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail and the New York Times and the USA Today and LA Times, everything, just within 1 month. And what's happening also is that the bookstores have started to ship out books again, and Amazon's shipping out books. And those people who cannot access books, what they have done is started to buy digital formats. So they're buying ebooks and they're buying audiobooks. And I don't know if any of you guys have listened to the audiobook, but I'm so proud of my narrator. Jess, you have? Yay. Sneha Mathan is somebody I got to choose as a narrator, and I just adored her voice. From the moment I heard it, I thought, that's Lakshmi. That is exactly what Lakshmi should sound like. So she and I worked on all of the pronunciations and the characters, and she's such a professional that she got everybody absolutely perfect, including the talking parakeet, Madho Singh. So if you do get a chance to listen to it, she is phenomenal. And she took us to the New York Times bestseller audiobook list as well, because she's so good. All right. So then the movie companies start calling right away. I really thought that they would wait like a year, wait 2 years. I had no idea when movie companies call, but I always thought that they waited to see how the sales are doing. They were convinced enough, though, that, it was doing well enough that, they wanted to work on it. So I get these calls and I don't know what to do with them. So my literary agent hires the agency in Hollywood called the Gotham Group. And Ellen Goldsmith Vane is the CEO of the Gotham Group. And so she's going to walk me through the process. One of the first things that she asked me is, do you see the Henna Artist as a novel or as a TV series? And I said, oh, hands down, I want a TV series, because I love binging on shows. I love watching episode after episode after episode, and I love watching season after season. I try to control myself. I try to say, okay, I'm just going to watch this one episode. And then I think, oh man, that was so good. Maybe I'll just watch one more. I watch one more and one more after that. And I love getting involved with characters. You know, it's probably why I enjoy writing so much, because I love building character. So you get to know more and more and more about them as the season progresses. So I said, TV, please. So she said, okay. So she went back to all of the production companies and she said the author would like to see a TV series. So, okay. So now I'm getting proposals for these 40, 50 page proposals about how they're going to do a TV series. And then I get to Zoom with all of these people, and I don't know movie people. I don't know how to make a decision like this. So I just went with my gut. I just thought, okay, I've asked the questions that I think I need to ask. So I talked it over with Ellen and I said, Ellen, here's what I'm thinking. And she said, okay, smart girl. So here is the people that I chose were Michael Edelstein, who ran the NBC Universal Studios in London when Downton Abbey was being filmed there. And he was responsible for turning Downton Abbey into a global empire. I don't know if you guys know this, but even PBS turned down Downton Abbey. They said, no, we don't think that there's enough of a global appeal here. So they didn't want to franchise it. They didn't want to take it over. So anyway, he was really responsible for that success. And so when he saw the Henna Artist, he said, oh my gosh, this could be an Indian Downton Abbey. We could make this lush. We can make it gorgeous. We have the upstairs and the downstairs kind of thing happening, just like in Downton Abbey. We have the richness of the landscape and the richness of things like henna designs and saris. And, we can do all kinds of beautiful things. So he sends the manuscript off to his friend Frida Pinto. And Frida says, oh my God, I love this book. Yes. And I'm going to play Lakshmi. And he said, that's what I thought, it would be perfect for you. So she's also going to executive produce. And so she'll be helping figure out who the directors, cinematographer, all those people in India are going to be. And then Miramax TV is somebody that Michael has a first look deal with. So he said, hey, you guys, I really want you to invest in this project. So they did. So if everything goes well, and I'm hoping that it will, we will be filming in late 2022, maybe early 2023. It just depends on what's happening with India, COVID, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so then in the meanwhile, I wrote book number 2. So as soon as they sent this one off to the printer, Malik kept bugging me and saying, you can tell my story, tell my story, tell my story. So I started writing The Secret Keeper. And in this one, Malik is a grown man. He's 20 years old. And he is doing an apprenticeship at the Jaipur Palace. He's learning about the construction trade because Lakshmi wants him to do something useful with his life instead of just hanging around Shimla, helping her a little bit here and there, and then getting involved in all of those activities that he likes to get involved with, all those enterprises that are not always kosher, right? And so, and also he has a love interest. He has a woman that he's become involved with. She's a widow. She is a Himalayan tribal woman, and she has 2 little kids. And so I think Lakshmi is afraid that he's going to get himself saddled with a family and not have a legitimate career. So she sends him down to Jaipur. And he is apprenticing with Manu. Remember, Manu is the facilities director at the palace, and he and Kanta are the ones who adopted baby Nikki. So Nikki is now 12 years old in The Secret Keeper, and Malik gets to, hang out with them. He also runs into the Singhs again because the Singhs are constructing all of these buildings that the Maharanis are working on, that they're investing in. And so we'll meet the Maharanis again. We'll also meet a couple of other interesting characters like the gold jeweler Motilal. So we will meet with him again also. So yeah, and we'll meet Madho Singh again. So we'll see a lot of the same people only 12 years later. And Malik is going to find something very disturbing in the construction that's going on. There is a big collapse that happens on opening night of the big cinema house that the Maharanis have invested in. And if he doesn't solve the mystery of what had happened, then Manu's job is threatened. And so the people he loves will be impacted. And you know how loyal Malik is. He would never let that happen. So that is what's going to happen in The Secret Keeper. And I'll give you this little tidbit now, because I know you're all wondering. Lakshmi and Dr. Kumar did get married. They got married about 6 years after Lakshmi went to Shimla. And then at some point, well, you'll find out The Secret Keeper how they eventually got together. Okay, and then since this one was put to bed and it's coming out on June 22nd, this one was a lot faster because the Henna Artist, I already know all these characters so well from doing the Henna Artist for 10 years, right? So I know exactly how they're going to react in any given situation. I know whom they live with. I know, there was lots of stuff that didn't make it into the Henna Artist in the 30th draft of this book. That, I can use again in The Secret Keeper. You get to find out why Malik grew up in the Pink City, whom he lived with, and also why he had to leave Jaipur at the time that he left with Lakshmi. It's not like he wanted to, it's like he had to. So you'll find all that stuff out. And in the third book, which I'm working on now in the trilogy, it is all about Radha as a 30-year-old. She is living in Paris. She met this wonderful guy who was traveling through the Himalayas when she was going to school in Shimla. And they got to talking, and then they fell in love. And next thing you know, she's eloping with him and she gets married in Paris. But, it's turned out well. And they have a good marriage. And she has 2 little girls. She is working as a perfumer. She was so good at mixing paints and henna paste that she got herself a chemistry degree at the Sorbonne. And then she went to work in the fragrance industry because that is so big in France. So she is working for a master perfumer. She's one of 3 assistants for this master perfumer. And she is on the cusp of designing a signature scent for this perfumer, who is, by the way, a woman. And there's a knock at the door on the 7th arrondissement, which is where Radha and Pierre live. And on the other side of that door is Nikki, who is now 18 years old. And he accidentally ran across a piece of paper on his mother's desk that informed him that he is not their child, that he was adopted. And it's come as a shock to him. Nobody ever wanted him to know. Nobody's ever indicated that he might be adopted. And so he has run off to Paris to figure out, who is this Radha? Is she really his mother? And who was his father? And what's going on? So that's book number 3. So right now I'm doing all this research on fragrances. Hey, if any of you guys have friends in the fragrance industry who either make perfume or know about how perfume is made, I'm more than happy to talk to them, because I want to make this as authentic as I can. So we have to learn about the fragrance industry. And then I'm also researching adoptions and adoptive parents and adoptees, and what happens, when there's an accidental disclosure like that, how it impacts everybody on all sides. So that's where I am right now, you guys. I'm sorry that's so long-winded, but I hope that answers a bunch of your questions. And now I'm looking forward to whatever other questions you might have.
Wow. Thank you so much for that beautiful tale of your journey into becoming an author. I hadn't heard you say it quite like that in the other interviews I watched. So thank you so much for telling us that story. I think that's really inspiring for anybody, no matter what your passion is, to know that, it's not an overnight success kind of thing. You have to have realistic goals, but also have that drive and that push to get yourself through the years of the hard work and the criticism, and be able to hold on to that dream and that original vision that you had. So I could see it in your face as you were telling the story, how much you just want to inspire people to follow their dreams. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to tell people is that, no one person writes a book. You have so many hands that went into the writing of a book. There were all of my fellow students in my master's program who saw various scenes that I was writing in the book. In fact, they're the ones that, well, actually, one of my professors encouraged me to write the sex scene in there. I was like, oh, I don't have to write the sex scene. I'm just going to say an hour later. And he said, no, you have to go into the sex scene because it informs character. Anything that informs character, you have to tell us about. And I just thought, oh my God, I thought this is gonna be kind of embarrassing. And but you know what? I just sort of like settled down and I lit a candle and I got myself a glass of wine. And I just thought, okay, let me just kind of imagine this whole thing. And so yeah, so it actually came across. And now that I've written that one sex scene, I'm like, oh, okay. I get it. This isn't so hard. So I put several of them in, in the Secret Keeper because, I mean,
why not?
I like being able to, portray sex in the way that I think women like to have sex, the way that men usually write about sex. And I think John Grisham says some very funny things about this. When he first started writing sex scenes, he would show them to his wife. And he would hear her laughing in the next room because it was so badly done. And, and so I think that women are kind of better at writing sex scenes. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it also.
It was steamy, but very tasteful. I enjoyed it thoroughly. You touched on something in your story that I have to ask. What was the original title for the Henna Artist?
Oh gosh, you're all gonna groan. It was from the proverb, only a fool remains in the water and stays an enemy of the crocodile. So I was calling it enemy of the crocodile because that's what Lakshmi ultimately becomes. She tries very hard never to become an enemy of all of these Parvatis around her, but eventually that is what happens, and then they eat her alive, basically. Yeah, it wouldn't have worked.
But it's a good story behind it. That's very cool. Oh man, I had so many questions that I just was jotting down, but I want to have a big one and then I'll pass it around to the other members so I know have tons of questions for you. Okay. My biggest question, one of my biggest questions was, how did you draw? I just felt that Lakshmi had endured so many different forms of abuse from different people, from different avenues in her life.
Yeah.
So did it take you all those years to be creatively compose these forms of treatment, or did you draw upon them personally from experience?
Are you talking about the herbal treatment, or are you talking about her personal experiences with clients and men and all of that?
Yeah, specifically, I guess, the mistreatment towards her from fellow women, from her ex-husband, the abuse she sustained there, and then of course, the sisterhood rivalry that she experienced. So many different types of conflict, I suppose, were meeting her at every corner. And I could feel the stress moving through the book because I also am an older sister and a woman in a patriarchal society and a self-made entrepreneur. So I'm like, oh my gosh, how much can one woman take? So I really felt for her, and I wanted to know where we drew the inspiration from all those conflicts and the trauma.
I think from the world around me, from things that I've experienced, the sexism I've experienced, the patriarchy I've experienced. I was in the advertising world for such a long time. And when I worked for other people, what would happen is, I loved the advertising world. It was very much like Mad Men, that whole series. In fact, I couldn't even watch Mad Men because it reminded me too much of how real that stuff is. And it's such a sexist environment to be in. People were constantly making jokes at the expense of women, and you're stuck thinking, okay, do I laugh now? Do I not laugh? If I keep a straight face, people will say, oh, you're taking yourself too seriously. The men in the room always say, oh, you're taking yourself too seriously. If I laugh along, then I am also shaming my fellow women. Why would I do that? So I remember all of those kinds of feelings. The other thing that happened also is that I was usually the only female copywriter in the group of males. For some reason, the writing world in advertising was in the 1980s and 90s when I was in it was the domain of men. And so, you know, there would be the boys I would see going to lunch with the creative director, with the bosses. And I'd be like, why didn't I get invited? And then there would be these, you know, I would hear that the guy in the office next to me is making 30,000 more than I am. I'm like, why is he making 30,000 more? He always leaves early and he's usually drunk at lunchtime. And what in the world is going on? I work my ass off. Why aren't I making $30,000 more? So I would go and ask for more money. And the kinds of things that I was told were things like, you are too ambitious for your own good. You need to stop asking for more than you deserve. Oh, you know what? We ran out of bonus money this year. Yes, we know you brought in a $5 million client, but you know, that really wasn't your doing. It was, you know, it was so-and-so's doing or whatever, you know, and I knew in the back of my mind, I knew that they're not telling me the truth. I know my worth, but there did come a point where so much of this was over the years had accumulated in my head that I was beaten down. I really felt like, okay, maybe I am just not as good as I think I am. Maybe I am, you know, lousy at this. And then at some point, I don't know how, but I picked myself back up and I said, okay, you know what, Alka, why don't you just admit the fact that this box, this advertising world, this corporate world, this is a box that wasn't made for you. This is a box that was made by men for men, and this is why you don't fit this box. And then the other thing is, why don't you go off on your own and make your own box? And that's when I went off and started my agency. And I put together the list of things I would need in order to start my own business. And then I started calling all of my friends before I quit my job. I started calling my friends and saying, hey, if I came and pitched to you, you know, do you think that you might consider hiring me? And they said, well, why don't you come and pitch and we'll let you know. So I quit my job and I started my own business. And I had a friend who was a graphic designer, so I had her design my business card and so on. So for the first 2 months, all I did was pitch, because I needed to get a bank of business together so that I could, you know, start hiring people. You know, I could get the deposits in so that I could start hiring some people to do the actual work. And then what I did was I hired females only, because females don't get enough opportunities in the advertising world. So I would hire female freelance art directors and writers and event producers, and my accountant was female. And then I extended that out to my house. So if I had something to do in my house, I would hire a female general contractor, a female plumber, a female electrician. You know, we can all do this. Every time we think of somebody to hire, think about a female first, and I'm sure you'll find one. So you know, in my first year of business, I billed $400,000. And so I proved to myself, I can do this. But if I had bought into their rhetoric about how I wasn't good enough, I was being too ambitious, I was being too assertive, why didn't I just let well enough alone? I never would have gotten out of that trap. So I think these are all experiences that led me to develop Lakshmi in the way that she develops, and the way that she deals with people like Parvati, you know, who are constantly putting her down, you know, and how she kind of deflects their insults. Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing the brutal honesty of your own life experiences into that character, because she's incredibly relatable and feels like a real person as you're listening to her speak about what she's going through and her dreams. And she's just lovely. I'd love to meet her in real life.
And I mean, you know, I don't think there is a woman here who hasn't experienced some part of what I just said, you know, who hasn't experienced that feeling of maybe it's, I want to say worthlessness, but, you know, there is a certain way that we are sometimes regarded in the corporate world that makes us feel worthless, that makes us feel like we're just adjuncts here. We're just being allowed into this place. We're just being allowed here to work. We don't really belong here. So here is one thing I have learned, ladies. I think women are so resilient and they are so remarkable. And I think it's because women raise the next generation, that is a big responsibility that women take on. And frankly, women do raise the next generation. Men have very little to do with, the kind of behaviors and moral codes and everything that we pass along to sons and daughters. So I do think that women are extremely capable. They're also multitaskers because they have to be, they're changing a diaper at the same time that they're on the phone, at the same time that they're worrying about the kids' lunches and whatnot. So women are very multitaskers. When you are a multitasker and when you are resilient and when you can do so many things, you will make a great entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship, I think, was just made for women. So made for women. If any of you guys are ever like doubting your ability to start your own business or to go off on your own and do your own thing, please do not doubt yourself. You can do this. You are a woman. You can absolutely do this.
Yeah, so good. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we've got a couple of entrepreneurs here, but any woman in a professional industry who feels like they're being stifled, I think that's very relatable. And in any industry, any career path, it's unfortunately something we have to work on as a society still. But let me open up the floor to other questions. So if you want to use the reaction button to raise your hand, then I'll call on you to unmute and ask Alka your question. Please don't hold back. Oh, mom. So my mom is Diana Fisher.
Hi, Mom.
Hi. Can you hear me okay, Alka?
Yeah.
I was the one who first nominated your book because I love it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing it. And I know there's a lot of questions. We don't have a lot of time with you. You've been so generous with your time. And thank you so much for giving us all of that background. It's so juicy. And it's so valuable for us to get that background story to a book. We don't usually get that information. I was wondering when I was reading the book, how much of Lakshmi's story do you think could happen today? Because I know in a lot of ways the caste system still remains. And I'm also very aware that women are very suppressed in all cultures. So I'm wondering, how much of her story do you think could happen today?
There are Lakshmis all over India, Lakshmis who are sort of forced to leave their marriages because they're not, they're not serving them well. I'll tell you this anecdote because I think it probably illustrates best whether Lakshmi's issues could exist today. So I got a call a couple of months after the Henna Artist was out last year from a woman in Mumbai. And Mumbai is a huge city, you guys. It is way larger than New York City. It is the biggest city in India. And so there's lots of what do you call them? High rises, skyscrapers, there's lots of industry there. All the movie industry is in Mumbai. And so I get a call from this woman and she says, Alka, I just read the Henna Artist and I had to let you know, I just loved it so much. And I said, oh, that's great. Tell me about yourself. So she told me she's like 30 something years old and that she was married when she was in her 20s. After she got her BA, she got married. And her husband started abusing her. And she thought, okay, you know what? Maybe if I have a baby and if it turns out to be a boy, he'll stop, harassing me physically. Well, she did have a baby and she did have a boy, but the husband never stopped hitting her. And so she went to her mother and said, Mom, I am not happy in this marriage. I really need out. And her mother said, no way. I am not supporting you to leave this marriage. Divorce is not acceptable in our family. We've never had one before. You need to stick it out. It will get better. So it didn't get better. She went to her sister and asked the same thing. asked for support. And her sister said, I'm not going to support you. You know, your divorce is going to be shameful to our family. And I don't want a divorcee in the family. No, no way. So then she went to a lawyer and she said, okay, how do I get out of this marriage? And the lawyer said, first thing you have to do is get yourself a job, because in India, the way that the laws are, and keep in mind, you know, this woman is calling me in 2020. Okay. The way that the laws are, the husband is going to get full custody of your child because you don't work outside the home. And so she said, well, how can I work outside the home when he won't let me? He didn't want her to work. And so the lawyer just shrugged and said, well, you got to figure something out. So here's what she did. She waited until her husband left for work every morning. And then she would go out with the baby in the stroller and she'd go through the streets of Mumbai looking for a job. She ultimately found one. She put the baby in daycare and she started working. She would always be home in time to make dinner. And I'm sure she endured a couple more beatings and so on when he was displeased with whatever it was she was doing. But ultimately, she saved up enough money to get a lease on an apartment. She did, and she settled in there. And then finally, she served him some divorce papers. So now that I'm talking to her on the phone, last year, I said, well, how is life now? And she said, it's lovely. It is so wonderful. And she's laughing and she's joking around. She's having a good time on the phone with me. And she said, you know, it's lovely because now I can date and I don't have to marry the guy that I sleep with. It's really fun. And I said, what, is your son in the room? And she goes, oh no, actually, I have made up with my sister. And so he's usually over at his cousin's, you know, if I'm ever going to entertain. But, you know, my son is just such a treasure and I just love, raising him, and I'm raising him to be a little bit gender neutral because he does the dishes and he's also learning how to cook and I take out the trash and, you know, and I said, well, that's wonderful. And she goes, yeah, the only thing is that he complains I leave too much crud on the dishes. And I said, why do you leave crud on the dishes? And she said, oh, because I'm blind. I was so shocked. I said, if you're blind, how did you read my book? And she said, oh, I've always been blind. I've always used a screen reader. I have a screen reader that attaches to my computer. That's how I also do my work. That's how I do my emails. That's how I do everything. I dictate into it and it, you know, writes everything out. And I was just floored. I thought, wow. Oh my God, if a woman who has always been blind figures out a way to leave this abusive marriage, then I am sure, you know, women, I mean, the resilience of women is really, she is a testament to that. That is an amazing thing. So yes, the caste system exists. The abuse of women still exists, as it does in many countries. But in India, women are frowned upon if they try to get a divorce, even though, as I mentioned in the Henna Artist, divorce became legal in 1955. It can still take 10 years to get a divorce unless you have a really good lawyer. And unless you've done all the things that the lawyer told you to do. You know, it's also very difficult to adopt babies. I don't know why, but, you know, it's difficult to adopt children. And a lot of families still have a stigma around adopting. You know, they will go to all kinds of lengths to have their own children before they'll adopt. And so one of the things I'm also trying to say in the Henna Artist is there's a lot of babies who need to be adopted, you know, especially they come from poor families that cannot afford another child. And so they'll drop them off at the orphanage. And, you know, in most cases, they will stay there until they're emancipated. They won't be adopted. So yeah, so a lot of things have stayed the same, which is why I started the book by saying independence changed everything and independence changed nothing. Because yes, it changed the fact that Indians felt that their country was their own after their 200 years of British rule. And they really felt like, you know, we can create our own India now. But situation didn't change for women very much. You know, for women, it was almost exactly the same.
Oh, thank you.
That's a shockingly sad story, and I cried a little bit.
Thank you know what? But let me give you this little bright light on the horizon. I just had a wonderful book club with 30 Indian women, and they're professionals. They're living in India, okay, and they're all over India, and they have this book club. And so they had read the Henna Artist, And a couple of them were lawyers, a couple of them were doctors. And the lawyers told me this very interesting thing. They said, okay, now that we've got so many women who are entering college and coming out with their degrees, their BAs, their MAs, their PhDs, they are actually making more money than their husbands. Now that's doing one of two things. One is it's eliminating the whole dowry. And we need to eliminate the dowry, because what the dowry does is it imprisons the parents of girls into giving sort of a ransom to the groom's family to say, okay, if you're going to take care of my daughter for the rest of your life, you can have this money. And that is just a terrible system, because it somehow makes the boys and the boys' family feel like they're better than, right? And that has existed in India for millennia. So these women and their families are telling the family that they're arranging a marriage with, they're saying, you know what, we're not going to give you a dowry. We don't need to give you a dowry, because our girl doesn't need to be looked after. She is going to be a doctor. She's going to be an engineer. She's going to be making a lot of money. So that's one thing that's happening. The other thing that kind of blew my mind is that a lot of these young women are asking for prenups in their arranged marriages. Now that is a huge, huge change. That's a huge change. Keep in mind, I am speaking at this point to upper middle class women. So, this is not everybody. In the lower classes, in the lower socioeconomic classes in India, nothing has changed. It's all still very much young girls getting married early, having children early, and not really having a lot of agency in their marriages. But the middle class, wow, in India, the middle class has grown like crazy. And now that they have money, they are sending their sons and their daughters to school. And that is making a huge difference in the way family structures are, in the way that love matches are now, a much bigger deal than arranged marriages are. Arranged marriage, there's still 70 to 80% is arranged as a marriage in India, but there's like 30% love marriages now, which is a really big deal. And the divorce rate is climbing, because women are saying, okay, so I married the guy that my parents said I should marry, they picked him out, but I'm not happy, or I don't like him, or, he's a dud or whatever. So I'm going to get a divorce. So the divorce rate is also climbing. So,
oh, wow. Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, it's only taken 70 years, but yeah.
Better late than never.
Right.
Does anyone else have a question or something they'd like to say, comment? Thinking. You can.
Oh, I think Ashley wants to say something. I bet she does. Ashley, the one who read the book in 24 hours.
Yeah, Ashley. Go ahead and unmute. There you go.
So it was more of just a comment or a little snippet from the book that really resonated with me. It was on page 40. And it was the quote of stretch your legs.
Only as far as your bed.
Only as far as you can. Yeah, as far as your bed. So it means don't get ahead of yourself too quickly and all that. Just so it really resonated, that portion with me. But
yeah.
I
how about one who cannot dance blames the floor?
Yeah.
That was really important to me, you guys. When I finally got married at 37, it was because I felt like I had found a guy who took responsibility for himself. Like I didn't have to baby him. I didn't have to be his mother or his cook, his cleaner, all of that. He was just going to take responsibility for himself. And I thought, okay, that's the guy I want to marry, because I am not anybody's, caretaker. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you're not the mom of your husband.
Right.
That's the way we operate as well. Anything that a mother would do, it's like, no, you can go have your mom do that. But any other questions or comments? Back to Diana. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, me again. I just remembered the other question I was going to ask. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. How much do you think, when Lakshmi felt obligated to help out her ex-husband who was abusive to her, and that decision would be a huge detriment to her and her advancing in her future. How much of that is part of the culture, and is it seen as a strength or a weakness to feel obligated to help out someone who's been abusive to you?
Oh, I think that you know, in India, because divorce is still very much frowned upon, because leaving a marriage is very much frowned upon still, I think people will do all kinds of things to try to maintain a front, to try to see if they can work things out in a marriage. You know, because shame and humiliation spread so easily to your extended family and your neighborhood and everybody around you, you have to be careful about making individual choices in India. You know, it's a very group-oriented society, unlike Canada and the United States, where we're very much about, you know, what color is your parachute? What do you want to do? What's making you happy? Those aren't questions that Indians ask themselves. No, it's what will make my family happy? What will make my family proud? What, you know, these two families that we're bringing together in this marriage, how are they going to react to whatever it is I'm doing?
Wow.
Yeah. On Netflix, you guys, you might want to watch this movie I saw last year. It's called Thappad. It's T-H-A-P-P-A-D. And I don't know if it's still there on Netflix. I'm hoping that it is, or maybe it was on Amazon. I can't remember now. But it was about a middle-class young couple. You know, they got married. It was a love match. It was, you know, they love each other's families. Everything is copacetic. And then he hits her. You know, he slaps her in a moment of total anger. And little by little, she gets so depressed, you know, because he never apologizes. And he does it in front of a whole group of people. And so little by little, she has to sort of deal with the fact that, you know, what is it she's feeling? And she's feeling completely disrespected. She's feeling disregarded. She feels that he thinks he's more important. And so he gets to do whatever he wants. You know, the entire family tries to talk her out of the divorce. She finally, you know, decides that she's going to get a divorce, and everybody comes to see her. Everybody and their mother comes to see her to talk her out of it. But it's a good movie. It's an Indian, you know, independent movie, not like Bollywood. So there's no singing and dancing.
I'm looking up that one for sure. I know that the Netflix in Canada is different from the States, so I hope that we can have it.
Okay.
I'll look for it.
Looks like we have Laura and Tina.
Yes,
Laura
okay.
first.
Let's go. Whoever can unmute the fastest can take the question.
I guess I did. So I love hearing about how women around the world resist and what that looks like. And I loved how you spoke to the emotional labor and just how intuitive and hyper aware we all are, and just paying attention and navigating a world that isn't too honoring and doesn't fully embrace women and all our power. And I also, I was wondering if you ever spoke to your mom about how she resisted or how she held that space for herself in being so progressive, and how she came about these beliefs even in such a traditional upbringing.
You know, I don't think I ever asked her where she got her courage from, but my father, you know, tells that story about, and I didn't even know about this until recently when my father told me. Otherwise, I would have asked her about it while she was still alive. He said that, you know, when you were just 4 years old, Alka, your brothers were 6 and 3, and you were all sitting around the dinner table, and his mother, my grandmother, had come to visit, and she was doling out food, you know, for everybody on their plates. And my mother turned around, she was serving, and she said, "What are you doing to my grandmother?" And my grandmother said, "Oh, I'm giving the boys more because, you know, boys need more." She was putting more food on their plate. And my mother said, "Not in my house. No, you don't do that in my house." And my father, still, when he tells this story, he gets these big eyes like, "I cannot believe that your mother talked back to her mother-in-law." You know, that was her sauce. And my mom never got along with her sauce, but you know, she told her exactly what she like. She didn't even like think about it. She didn't have to think about it. She just said right away, "No, not in my house. You're not doing that." And so I think that, from a very early age, my mother must have inherently felt that she was just as important as any boy. And why does she have to, play second fiddle to anybody? And then she would do all these funny little things that I think were her rebellion. One of them was to raise me the way that she raised me. That was her rebellion also. I remember when I was 16, we went to India. It was my parents and myself. We went to India, and somebody made a comment to my dad about how maybe he had brought me to India to have an arranged marriage, to maybe look at some prospective bridegrooms. And I looked at my mom and I said, "Mom," I'm like, I would never have come if that was the case. And my mom said, "Don't worry, that's never going to happen. Never." So, I think that her rebellion took very different forms. And I think she also raised my brothers to be very, independent thinkers and, do whatever they wanted to do. And then, like I told you about the birth control pills, right? Like she never, ever gave me a hard time about that. She just said, "Okay, we just have to make sure that you don't get pregnant." And okay, one other thing that she did when we were getting to the, like a couple of years before we were supposed to all go to school. And because we're so close in age, she knew we were all going to be in school at the same time. So she wanted to work. She said to my dad, "I have to go to work." But Dad didn't want her to work because it was shameful to have a wife who had to work, because it meant that the man couldn't support the family, right? So my mother defied him and she went to look for jobs. Now, my mom didn't have any kind of formal training to do anything. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't, she had no formal training. So she went to work at a factory where they soldered motherboards together, back when motherboards were really large pieces of, hardware that you put inside like an IBM mainframe or something. So she spent all day long soldering motherboards together, and she was really good at it. And they made her a supervisor before she knew it, because she's also great at getting along with people. And so, that was her rebellion. Her rebellion was, "I don't care, Mr. Husband, that your ego is hurt at this point. I need to make sure that my kids can go to college." And I remember one of the scholarships that I got was from her place, Textron, where she was working, because they offered scholarships. And so she had me apply. So, I think her rebellion took a lot of different forms. And ultimately, okay, so here's the ultimate rebellion. When Mom was 60 something years old, she got a divorce. I forgot about that one.
A big one.
Kind of a big deal. Wow.
So Mom got a divorce, and she said, she just blossomed. She just turned into this happy person who was always laughing and telling jokes. And I thought, where's my mom? Like, why didn't I grow up with this mom? This mom is way more fun. And that was the mom that I was traveling to India with, the fun mom. So it was a very different time for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I just have one more thing to say. If you do need people, I'm adopted, but I knew from the get-go. So I don't know if you're looking for people who didn't know, but I do know some people and people who have adopted and others who have been adopted.
Okay, Laura. Okay. Laura Wilcox. Okay, I'm putting you down. Okay, fantastic. Wow. Okay, that sounds really great. Thank you so much for the offer. Okay, I think Tina's next. Tina with the great last name, La Rochelle.
La Rochelle, isn't it fancy?
I love it.
I have a question about the moment on the train platform when Harry is standing there, and Lakshmi describes him as being handsome. And I'm curious to know, part of me is curious to know what he says to her, while also realizing that it doesn't really matter because she's finished with that chapter of her life finally. She's released him, she's released herself from that. But I'm slightly curious to know, what is it that she says? Do you know what she says to him?
Tina,
Or what
I
he
have
says
no
to her?
idea.
Sorry, what he says to her.
I have no idea. But so I'm a very visual writer. So when I am writing a scene, I have spent a lot of time envisioning it in my head. And as I envision it, I see the people moving, I see people talking, I know what the sights and the sounds are of, the environment. And I will work with it as I walk, as I ride my bike, as I just do all kinds of movement kinds of things. I will think about it. Sometimes even when I'm doing yoga, I'm thinking about a scene. And so as I finalize it, that's when I start writing it down. So I saw that scene, and originally in that scene, Samir had been the one at the train station who was saying goodbye to her. That was an earlier draft. And my editor at HarperCollins, Kathy, is the one who said, you gotta do something about Hari. Right now, the way that I see Hari is he's just evil, Mr. Evil. He's just a cardboard character. He's like Darth Vader. Can you make him more human, like all your other characters? Can you make him good and bad? So that's when I started thinking about Hari, and I eventually got to the point where Hari did have a transformation in his life. And so when I got to the train platform scene at the very end, again, as I was rewriting, I thought, oh my God, it can't be Samir saying goodbye to her at the train station. It's got to be Hari, because they need to say goodbye to each other. They need to say goodbye to that relationship and just move on with their lives. So that is what happened there. And then I saw him saying something to her, but I am with her in my mind on the train as we're leaving. So I don't hear what he said either. Thank you so much for your question. It's weird because it kind of reminds me of how I write and how I am with my main character, that first person character. That's the person that I am with as I'm in a scene, and everybody else in the scene I can see except for the main character who is right here in me. All right, Alyssa, you have a question.
Yes. Sorry, my name is, I'm using my girlfriend's Zoom chat. So my name is Kirsten.
Okay, hi, Kirsten.
Hi. My question was, so the dialogue between the characters and the character connections, they came across very naturally and effortless. Was this something you struggled with, or did it flow naturally? And also, who was your favorite secondary character to write for?
I think that I wrote each one of these scenes. Each one of those major scenes was written over and over and over till I felt that the flow of the dialogue felt very natural. That is just something that it just takes a lot of work because, initially I might just write down what I'm thinking these people are saying, but not necessarily the final words. That's going to take me probably another 10 revisions of that scene to get there. My secondary favorite character, I loved the older Maharani because, like I said, I drink gin and tonics, and I love how eccentric she is. I love how she just comes out with these bizarre things, like she likes the shape of Lakshmi's head. I don't know where all of that comes from, but she is so entertaining to me. And then I felt really sorry for her that her husband had not allowed her to have her own children. And by the way, this really did happen. In my research, I found out that Maharajas would often believe their astrologer over their own wives. And if the astrologer said, your natural born son is going to try to dethrone you, they would send their own son away. And then they would adopt from outside the family to take over the throne, which, it made my heart go so, oh my God. And I felt so bad for the older Maharani. But then I gave her the talking parakeet because I thought, okay, the talking parakeet is now the stand-in for her husband, and now she's going to order him around. So, come here, go there, do this, go with Malik, go with the chef, so she, she gets her agency in one way or another. I think another point I'm trying to make in the book, a larger point, is that women deserve agency no matter what culture they're from, no matter what, no matter what, like if they want children, if they don't want children, if they want to work outside the home, they don't want to work outside the home, whatever it is that women want, they deserve agency. We shouldn't just discount them because of one weird thing or another that we've been taught to do. So I wanted to say also that, just because you have power and privilege like the Maharanis, you don't actually have agency. You don't get to call the shots. Your husband is still calling the shots in those occasions. And that can bring on depression. It can bring on all kinds of, eating disorders. And I think women suffer a lot in those kinds of situations when they don't have agency. They suffer a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have a question? Roshan, are you Indian? Your name sounds Indian.
I'm actually from Sudan, but one of my mom's best friends gave me the name. So yeah.
Oh,
and
she is Indian. Okay.
Yes,
Okay. I thought that's an Indian name. Okay. Wonderful. And did you have any thoughts on the book itself, being from Sudan? Did you have any?
I did. I had a lot of thoughts, and there were so many parallels to sort of the culture that I come from. Groupthink is a big thing there as well. My mom also had wanted a divorce, and everyone got involved and made it not happen. And she had little ways of rebelling in her own way as well. And something that she taught me very early on was, and kept repeating, was, don't let anyone tell you can't do something because you're a girl. She unfortunately passed away very young as well. So I always wonder, what could have been for both her life and mine if she had been around. I think the thing that kept jumping out to me in the book the most is how much a sense of duty can hold us hostage, even as we are rebelling against it. And when we do manage to break away for some form of freedom, as Lakshmi did, there is still a very, very high price. And even the guilt around having been able to achieve some measure of freedom also holds us hostage. And and I liked how, so while she is trying to build this life for herself, she's also building it because she wants to make amends with her parents, and she wants to fulfill that duty of being able to take care of them. And the more she fights for that, the more she's pulled away from her legacy. And to me, what I saw as her legacy was what her mother-in-law taught her as a herbalist, which was to heal and to empower women in a society that takes that power away from them. And so ultimately, when Lakshmi really is free, it's when she goes back to that legacy, working in that hospital, and finding love her own way. I actually resented Radha a lot for coming into Lakshmi's life.
Me too.
I felt like she just had this opportunity, and you've taken it away from her and given her one more sort of duty in her life. And then the other thing is how much wealth affords or grants this proximity to power, which in the book is, the misogyny and the patriarchy in Indian society, or in many societies in the world. But how, so Parvati, as a wealthy woman, that proximity to power affords her protection from it a little bit. And it really, and I get that, people want to protect what they have, what gives them any kind of agency that they can find in a society doesn't allow it to them. But I really, really hated how she wielded that proximity to power as a weapon against all of these other women in society. And I felt like you could could have done so much more. And I think in the end, when she ends up buying Lakshmi's house because the floor speaks to her, to me, I found myself hoping that maybe Parvati had sort of figured out a way to be more generous with her power. So that was kind of my hope for her. But no, I loved the book. I actually read it last year and read it again for this session. And it just, yeah, it was.
Well, I love your thoughts. I think that those are all so insightful. I do think that one of the things that happens when women don't get direct power, like Parvati, you know, she doesn't really have direct power. She only has this ancillary power. And I think what happens is that they take it out on the people around them. And, you know, unfortunately that, you know, impacts a lot of women. Like women will do that to other women. I think that's one of the reasons why we end up with, you know, women acting badly, because they don't feel powerful enough. I think if we all felt powerful enough and had a right to our own personhood, then, you know, we wouldn't you know, look to others to put them down, to make us feel better than them. Yeah. But you'll see Parvati again in The Secret Keeper, and you can decide for yourself whether she's had a change.
All right, I have hope then.
Okay, let's see who else. Shelby or Jade or Crystal, do you guys have any questions?
You've been called out, ladies.
I actually do. I really enjoyed the novel, Alka, and especially just the inspiring words that you've shared with us tonight as well. I think what jumped out at me a lot while reading it was the relationships that these mothers had to their children, and in different ways, right? Like the one who lost her baby, and then Radha having to give her baby up, and all of those things. What I guess what I found shocking was Lakshmi's own mother, who didn't even read her letters and threw them in the fire. And I think so I want to ask you, is that level of shame when they're talking about, you know, bringing shame to the family? Is it because I feel like I'm a little bit starstruck right now, so I feel like I'm tripping over my words. Because I'm a mother myself, and I just can't imagine my child doing anything that would make me not even be curious about their state of well-being. So it would be one thing for her mother to publicly disown her and talk about, you know, her having left her husband as being very shameful and wanting to distance herself, but then having those letters and personally choosing not to read them and throw them in the fire. Is that really reflective of how deep that shame cuts in that culture?
Yes,
Wow.
it is. And I'll tell you a personal anecdote. My mother's father had 6 daughters and 1 son. So he had high hopes for his son. He thought, you know, I'm going to pass the mantle on to him. My grandfather was a judge. And, you know, he's going to inherit everything. He's going to, you know, well, my uncle decided to marry an actress in Mumbai. My grandfather was so scandalized and so shocked because in the 1950s and 60s, if you were going to marry an actress or hang out with actresses, you know, they were equivalent to prostitutes in people's minds. Not that they really were, but that's how people thought of them. And so my grandfather cut all communication off with my uncle, did not speak to him again for 12 years.
Wow.
I don't know what was the occasion that finally got him talking to him. I have no idea, but my uncle ended up getting married in a very small ceremony. They moved, you know, they lived in Mumbai all of those years. They had 2 little boys. And my grandfather, you know, never spoke to them. Didn't read any letters, didn't respond. I just thought, oh, get over yourself.
Yeah.
But, you know, as Roshan and I know from our societies that we come from, that are groupthink, that is how people think. People, you know, feel that they need to punish you for transgressions, and the entire family will punish you in that way. You know, they won't take a second look at you. They will banish you from weddings and festivals and happy occasions. You are not invited anywhere. Yeah, it's really awful.
Yeah.
Even today, you know, if you're divorced, people don't want you to come to a wedding. They don't want you to come to a party. They don't want you to come to a festival that they're celebrating because they think it's going to rub off on them. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine from the mother's perspective, I guess, of not just wanting to open that letter and see how her daughter is doing. So
Yeah.
it was eye-opening to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Crystal, it kind of lets you know what a groupthink society is like, and how the, you know, their value system is so different. It's just, yeah, it boggles the mind. So before I go, you guys, shall I take a screenshot of all of us?
Yes,
we're all looking so good.
And I can also send you screenshots of certain points in the video as I rewatch it where everyone's smiling and looking.
Aw, yay.
I can send you that by email too.
I think we lost Kristen, but I you know, she was the one on the phone. She was using somebody else's. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yay. All right, I'm gonna send that along to you, Melina. Thank you so much, you guys. I do want to tell you about this workshop that I'm going to be giving.
Yes.
You know, not to promote it or anything, but I do think it's a really cool workshop that these people have put together. And it is for anybody who wants to write or wants to think about working with their mother in any way. And I know you guys all, you know, have thought about your mothers. I know Diana and Melina definitely are in this camp. So, So what I'm going to be teaching is, it's called Mothers and Daughters, and it's the weekend of the May 15th and 16th. And we're going to have a whole group of authors who actually work together, mothers and daughters who work together. Then there's a mother and daughter team who act together there. And then there's me, who just used my mother and wrote about her in the book to immortalize her. So there's a lot of different authors who are going to be talking about that. And then we are going to have exercises that we're going to have people do to understand each other more, so mothers can understand their daughters more, and daughters can understand their mothers more. And you know, I think it's going to be a really kind of special session. It's going to be really kind of cool to see what comes out of it. So we'll do some reading and writing exercises together, and you know, so there'll be some quiet time to just write. Yeah.
Sounds lovely, and really does speak to me because my mother's a self-published author.
What?
Yes. She's written 2 books. Yes.
Wow, Diana, cool.
And she sells them just privately, but I know that she's working on a 3rd. Yes. Can you tell us more?
Well, I've been a columnist for 18 years now. So I had a column when I lived in Asia for 3 years. And then when I came home to Canada and married my husband, the farmer, I started another column based on life on the farm, and that's still running in local newspapers. So
wow.
18 years, and then I just put them into 2 books. So it wasn't the same sort of ordeal that it takes to produce a work of fiction. I've been trying to write fiction for over 10 years. I can't. It always comes out as the truth.
Oh.
So yeah, I just write about my life, and life is sometimes better than fiction.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I've been trying to write fiction. I've been doing workshops. I just did one with Joseph Boyden. He's a famous Canadian writer. And I love to meet my favorite writers. I go to the Ottawa Writers Fest when there isn't a pandemic and meet some of my favorite writers.
Why have I not been invited to the Ottawa Writers
Yeah, you
Fest?
need to come. You need to come. Yeah.
We'll make
Okay.
it happen.
It's inspiring. So yeah, I'll look into your workshop for sure.
Yeah.
I have 3 daughters, so you never know. One of them might want to take me up on it.
Aw,
All right, my
that
youngest-
is,
yeah,
that is
my
so
youngest
sweet.
sister,
Oh,
Paulina's
that's
a
really
writer.
nice.
Yeah. Paulina's a
Yeah.
journalist, so she loves creative writing as well. I think she'd really be into that.
Wow.
Right.
Okay. I'll send you the specifics on that.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think I think we do need to have conversations with our mothers about their lives before we came along, before we were in the picture. Because
Yeah.
they had full lives before we came into the picture. It's kind of interesting to find out what that's all about.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for your attention. I hope you will pre-order The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. And that's coming to
100%.
you on June 22nd. And then next year, hopefully, we'll have book number 3 out. And we'll be on our way to the TV series. Woo.
Yay, that's so fantastic. We're so excited. And thank you so much for joining
You're
us
so welcome.
tonight.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks, Diana, for recommending the book in the first place. All right. Bye, guys.
Take good care. Thank you. Wasn't that amazing? Y'all can unmute now if you want.
That was so cool.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man, she's incredible. Just incredible. I'm consistently blown away by how down to earth our authors are. And
Mhm.
every time I think, okay, we're going to hit someone who is, not down to earth, who's maybe a little conceited because of the fame or the attention, or, thinks that this is a waste of their time. But like, it just gets better and better. Like, honestly, like everyone we've spoken to has been so gracious and humble. And like, I feel like after the first 15 minutes, like we feel like we're talking to a peer, like a real, like a friend almost. And it's been, every time I'm just so like amped up. Like, I just want to like do things with my life, she was incredible. That was a little longer by 40 minutes than we usually go, but
Oh,
so
wow.
worth it. So worth it. So I won't keep you guys any longer unless there's something anyone wants to talk about. Ashley, go for it.
Can we please make the sequel, or is it July?
June. Yeah.
June?
Well, yeah, it's come out June, but the July's book read.
We should.
Yes.
Can.
If we can get a copy.
Yeah.
We'll have to pre-order. We'll have to go look for the pre-orders, but I'll post the link when I find it into our group so we can all pre-order it.
Perfect.
Do we have a book to read next?
We have to vote. Yeah, we haven't voted yet. So we're gonna have to do that. I'll put up a poll and we'll all nominate. Everyone please nominate a book. And whether you already own it or if you want to read it, we're all interested to know what you want to read. And we've had better success in getting authors on that are Canadian, even though Alka is not. They're just a little easier to contact, and in the same time zone helps a lot. But she's actually, it was like 6 p.m. her time. Sorry, she got on and it was 5 p.m. her time. So she's 3 hours behind us. So we made it work. But yeah, traditionally, just Canadian authors have an easier sells to come onto the group. But anybody is up for grabs. I mean, yeah, if there's a famous author that you really enjoy reading and want to share it with us, we want to know about them.
Great.
Yeah. I'll cut you all loose for the night. It's so nice to
Thank
see you all.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks so
you.
much.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah.
I love you all. Mwah, 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 mwah. Have a good night. Talk to you soon.
Too. Bye.
Bye.